When my youngest daughter was in elementary school, we moved from Brooklyn, New York to West Windsor, New Jersey, a small suburban town. That year she had an assignment, and that was to write about her life. So one day she came sprinting through the kitchen door, Mom, read it, read it. It was the assignment. She wrote about her favorite seasons, her future dreams, her peach-colored room. Then came the part about her role model. I was getting ready to be flattered. This is what she wrote. My first role model is my mom. I would like to be like her because she divorced 2 times and raised 4 children all by herself. That is a very responsible woman. I almost swallowed my tongue. I was the new mom in town, and this so-called sharing was making me feel very uncomfortable. It felt as if the Wizard of Oz just unveiled the curtain and I was standing there stark naked. But then I had to check myself, because if she was okay with me, then I had to be okay with me. Still, I did think about it that evening. Was I promoting divorce? So here's my backstory. I was shaped by my mother, who was an alcoholic, and my stepdad, who was a drug addict. They were with each other for years, despite the fact that he abused her, verbally, emotionally, and physically. They were my role models. Now I want to stop here and have you ask yourself, who were your role models growing up? Because according to the intergenerational transmission theory, parenting behavior is transmitted across generations. And if we think about the social learning theory that of course says children learn by role models, then are we all repeating our parents' behavior, just recycling what we learned, for better or worse? I had to think about that myself, because was my life fated to be like my mother's? So my life assignment was not to be like my mom. So I decided that I would change my future family story. But how do we change, or how did I attempt to change my intergenerational story? One minor setback at a time. I invited destiny to partner with me. You see, I think destiny is different than fate. Fate is a one-way street, and destiny offers you the opportunities to make a right turn or a left turn. So in the words of Beethoven, I shall seize fate by the throat, and it shall certainly never overcome me. When I was a teen, I decided that I was going to move my life chess pieces the way I wanted to move them. But when I was 16, my mother suffered a brain hemorrhage after an incident with my stepfather. And I visited her in the hospital. And as she lay there with half her face drooped down and the other side with a horseshoe-shaped scar of stitches on her bald head, she said I needed to leave the home because I didn't get along with my stepdad. So that cut deep, but I moved on. And I went searching for love in all the wrong places and ways. Before long, I was in a teen love relationship, and before long, I was a teen mom. I had my first daughter at 18. I lived with their dad, and we provided a nice, safe, and happy home. Then I had another child at 21. Things were looking really good for me. But then cocaine entered the scene. You see, he started to use heavily. And for me, drugs were the enemy. So I threatened to leave if he didn't stop. But he had a solution, and that was to move to Puerto Rico, where cocaine didn't exist. I naively agreed. So we packed our furniture and our things, and we moved. Cocaine was alive and thriving in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. I fell into a pool of self-pity. But then one day, I walked into a general store where they sold everything from popcorn to handyman tools. And I saw a book rack, a metal book rack in the corner, you know, the kind that you can twirl around to see your options. And I noticed an English titled book. I bought it. Little did I know that that book would change the course of my life. I read it in 2 days, and I realized that the scenarios in that book mirrored my life. I was being held hostage by my mother's story and my past. And if fate had its way, I would be seduced by every unhealthy relationship And so would my children. They would follow my path. So I decided at the cost of one life and to save 3, I needed to leave. So with 2 children, $200 and 2 suitcases, I boarded a plane back to New York. When I arrived there, I stayed with my sister for about a month or 2. I got a job as a receptionist. I found childcare, and things were working out for me. I embraced single parenthood. It would be 6 years before I decided to give marriage a try. The month my mother passed away, I met my soon-to-be husband. He was charming, he was comforting, so we started to date. We went on vacation together. I met his extended family. He met mine. Things were looking good. We had the same family values. And he didn't indulge in drugs or alcohol, so for me, this was excellent. We got engaged, and before long, we got married. In the beginning, things were working out, but then he insisted that I learn more about his religion. You see, he was Jewish and I was Catholic. So I read a couple of books. Then he insisted on managing all the finances, even though I had a salary independent of his. I had worked my way up in the development field, even though I didn't have a college degree. And I was making pretty good money. Then I started to notice his short temper with the girls. That concerned me a little bit. But then I thought he's a step-parent and it would take some time for him to make that adjustment. So we went for family counseling and we met with the religious leaders and things were getting better. Then I got pregnant with my son, my 3rd child. At that point, he insisted that I convert. And so I did. Then I schooled my 2 girls in the Jewish faith. And before you know it, we were one big, happy Orthodox family. Except his temper kept resurfacing. But he had a solution, and that was to move to Israel. You see, when a Jewish person moves to the Holy Land, that is considered aliyah, which means to ascend upwards. So I thought that was a positive thing. So we packed our prayer books and our furniture, and we moved to Haifa, Israel. We settled in a nice Orthodox community neighborhood. 1 month later, a deliberate slap in my face would result in a bloodshot eye. I was in emotional shock for 2 reasons. 1, that was the first time he ever did anything like that. And 2, I just found out that I was pregnant with my 4th child. So I was in a dungeon of depression because I thought I betrayed my family. And another incident happened where he smacked my daughter's hand so hard that her pinky swelled. Now I really felt like I ruined my future family story. There was no book that I found to power me up that time. But I did find a support group for families who were dealing with issues like we were. And I snuck away every chance I could to keep myself aware of the situation. He traveled a lot that year, so he was hardly home. And he never struck me again or the kids. But the verbal and emotional abuse started to surface. So I gave birth to my daughter, my 4th child, and I was completely happy. But 2 weeks after I gave birth, my head would become a target of an item that he threw at me just because I said something he didn't like. That's when I knew I had to make a change. And I remembered a quote, "The first time you're a victim, but the second time you're a volunteer." So I asked him if I could go to the States. My sister was getting married and I wanted to attend. He reluctantly let me go with the kids. I arrived in Brooklyn, New York, and on the phone I let him know that I wasn't returning, and if we were going to fix our marriage and our problems, that it would be in the States. So he did come a couple of weeks later, and we set ourselves up in a living arrangement. But 2 weeks later, we had an explosive fight, and my intuition told me to leave. I called my sister, swallowed my pride, and asked her if I could come and stay with her with my 4 kids. She agreed. It was the night before her wedding. So when I got there, she said, "Sure, you can stay for 10 days while I'm on my honeymoon, but when I get back, you need to go." I said, "No problem." So I made a list and I said to myself, get a job, find a babysitter, find a place to live, and find the finances to make it all happen. With each passing day, things fell into place. I found a job, I found a babysitter, I found a home. And then when it came to the finances, I used my fundraising skills and I contacted all my friends and asked them if they could loan me $100 each. And they said it was a donation, so that was in my favor. I orchestrated a new life in 10 days. From that setback, possibilities were born in my mind, and I felt empowered. But the reality was I had a newborn, a toddler, and 2 teens, and it was really hard being a working mom. So months passed by, and then I decided to go back. Studies show that it takes at least 7 times before a person leaves a volatile situation. But I had a condition. I let my then husband know that we needed to get therapy, and we had to take it serious, and we did. So we all moved back together again. So it worked out for a couple of months, until one day he came home from work before me and lashed out at my girls, and I came home to a scene. The therapist insisted that we work on it. I insisted on packing his bags. I didn't want to wait for anything to get any worse. We divorced a year later. Then I was, again, a new single mom, and I looked around and we were living in this small apartment, and I thought, no, this is not how it turns out. I want a house. So I started to save up for a down payment, and within 1 year, I bought a house. So I decided to go back to college. I went to school on the weekends and in the evenings while I was working full-time, supporting my kids. And before long, I earned a bachelor's and a master's degree, and I became a public school teacher. 2 toddlers, 2 teens, 2 cats, and 2 birds. I made it happen. So I'd like to end this talk with the better part of my setbacks, and that's the joy of parenting my 4 kids. Things weren't perfect after that, but they were pretty good. We had meals together every single night. And that one trip where I drove an RV from New York down to Florida almost did me in, but it was worth it. And our annual hike up Mohonk Mountain in New York taught us all perseverance, especially that time when my son's encouraging hand yanked me up the hardest part. And I knew I did my job when my eldest daughter, at 26, tattooed on her back, "To thine own self be true." Yes, my 4 kids survived my single parenting from cradle to all college grads. And today they are pursuing their authentic selves. Alice Walker said it best. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any. I say, use your power, show up for your destiny, and make brave choices after your setbacks. Thank you.